So this question I'm very curious to hear about because I keep hearing about drone formulation with adjuvants, how there's this great opportunity, how nobody's really doing anything about it. So I'd really like to get all of your perspectives on this to give me a little bit more clarity on this. So, Rufe, what is your take on, you know, what's happening with drone formulation with adjuvants?
I think before mentioning the formulation side, I would like just touch upon the fast development of drone itself. So if you look at the new generation of drone, they are so powerful, so smarter. So and it's keep evolving, and just I think it's an efficiency gain by using drone instead of the traditional sprayer. I think it's just enormous. So I think people will get used to use drone and harder to get back to the old tools. So it will quickly grow still in China, in Asia, but also in South America, to some extent, maybe also in the United States and Europe. So definitely this is a big opportunity and there's a big need for the right adjuvant to it. So I think because the drone is changing so much, but probably principle needed from adjuvant is because of the low volume application, and also it's a rather faster moving sprayer. So those principal functionalities from adjuvants could be compatibilizers and stakers better, and maybe humectant as well because it's a spraying from a higher altitude heights, so you need them to make sure the droplets remain and then they can add to the targets. So those I think the basic functionalities, no matter how drone changes or how the nozzle changes, those are the things I think will remain relevant for the coming years. But I would also think the adjuvant companies like us really need to watch out and also adapt to the new or faster growing drone technology and to really matching their development with our chemistry.
Yeah, I think, from what I'm hearing, it's like there's this opportunity, but it's almost like companies don't want to dive in because they want to see how much the adoption happens. But the adoption of ag tech is happening. So, Terry, what's your take on this?
Well, I would say, first of all, the real estate in the tank is really expensive, right? Because you're using really, really low concentrations of it. And then the key question is, how do you get in the tank? Because right now, conventional adjuvants are not designed for the drones as it stands today. When I was at my previous role here and just learning what we were, because drones were just coming on and a lot of people were looking at it, we're working with a lot of suppliers. Everybody was scrambling trying to figure it out. We were working with Steve Lee at the University of Auburn. He's one of the renowned experts here in the US and across the world. It's just understanding the effects the adjuvant can make and do as it's going across there, because you got the atomizers, right? Different nozzle technologies. And like Rufi said, it's the technology is changing quickly within the drone space. And if you don't stay with it, you're going to get left behind. Almost kind of like hybrids of corn, right? If you're out of it for about 2 or 3 years, things change. Same here. And I just think it's something that we're going to have to address and understand, because it's not going away. Other countries are using it very successfully. The US is coming along. We'll see how they go. I know there's swarms of drones and different things that they're looking at and to effectively apply, say, a 120-acre field, right? I know over in some of the Asian markets where the fields are much, much, much smaller, it makes a lot of sense, but it's not going away. We just need to get in front of it and figure it out. But we are working with that. And you really want good coverage, right? That's the ultimate key. And so how do you do that? Do you look at the silicones, the trioxylins, right? All of that, lots of things that we're exploring. So
why, maybe you could help me with this question. Why is it something that companies are exploring, but it doesn't seem like any companies really kind of going at it? Like what seems to be the hesitation, would you say?
I would say it's a great question. I don't know if I have a good answer, but I'll try to answer it. I think the hesitation is obviously the amount of product that are going to get used is relatively small. And then you've got other acres and different crops and whatnot. It's a matter of balancing act on what's the return on investment here, right? You still got the aerial, the fixed wing, the helicopter, rotary, and all that. Those aren't going to go away. It's going to be complementary to it because there's a lot of places those type of application equipment can't get into that a drone is perfectly suited for. So I just think it's probably dipping the toe in the water because they're trying to understand it and what value it's going to bring for not only their business but their growers.
Okay, so it's still on an area of opportunity in the future. Andrea,
Absolutely.
yeah, Andrea, what would you like to add to this?
Yeah, as they mentioned, there are additional variables, right, that you have to consider when it comes to drones. There are a lot of challenges, but we've seen quite a bit of success with, a couple of our products, particularly tested in the Asian market. That is, as we all know, more developed. Just to give some reference to the audience, there are around 250,000 drones, operating in China, 190,000 hectares of drones in Japan, being treated with this mode. While in Brazil, which is probably the most advanced Latin American market on this topic, they operate around 35,000 drones. So I think, as our colleague said, is something that it's growing. I mean, I think it's already established in Asia, in the bigger markets. Vietnam already sprays 70% of their rice crops via drones. In Latin America, I think Brazil is probably the country that is already working with drones. The rest of Latin America, Argentina is just starting to talk about it. In the US, I think Terry already mentioned the challenges. So I think this is going to be a space that is going to continue to evolve. I think there's challenges on standardizing solutions, right? Because as they mentioned, you have different variables. But I think there's some prototypes that look promising for these type of applications, and I think that the applicators are going to see some good products coming out in the next few years.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, so my final question before we start taking questions from the audience. So if you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A chat at the bottom. Final question for our panelists is, what three challenges are the adjuvants market facing right now, and what are the solutions? Rufe, you'll want to start with that?
Yep. I think right now we see economic slowdown. So I think that's probably the first challenge I will put. Because of that, I think farmers will have less available cash to use to buy additional tools. So for some, maybe adjuvant is not on their must-to-buy list. So I think that's the challenge one. And as that puts a pressure to the industry, but I guess what we can do is really continuously generating the relevant data for the users and create compelling user cases to repeatedly show to farmers that using the adjuvant can really improve your return on investment. So that's something you should definitely consider. I think challenge two is, I think, it's regulation. It's regulation, complexity and fragmentation. So as we discussed already, I think it's some people review adjuvants inert, some are consider to regulate them as similar as the pesticides. This is a huge gap in between. And just take tank mix adjuvant again in Europe. So this type of national registration model, I think, is really really make it delay or even impossible to deploy some new product in certain countries. So I guess, yeah, it's probably for this, it's really tricky. But I guess what we can do is we also need to bring a strong data and a scientific data to repeat the message to the regulators that we have to innovate and adapt to those adjuvants. That's, I think, probably the easiest way that we can get our sustainability targets meet and have our food production sufficiently secured. And I think lastly, I would just mention, I think nowadays adjuvants become more and more powerful, but also complicated. So it's also a lot of product to choose for farmers. I'm just thinking from my perspective, it's not easy to the end users to select the right product for the right application. So I think probably Adjuvant are limited. Other Adjuvant companies, they probably already do this to have a kind of a user-friendly selector, some AI-backed selectors to really help the farmers to choose and to guide them through the blending process. So just to improve the user experiences, so let them easier to adapt with Adjuvants. So that's my take.
Great, thank you. Yeah, education I think is huge, especially with biologicals. I think that that's a really key part of any sort of marketing plan. Thierry, did you want to add to this?
Sure. I'll just start off with, well, since he had talked about regulations, that's absolutely one of the number ones here, and they're not going away. And it's finding ways to work within the system, which is going to be challenging, but not insurmountable. But I'll add on to that costly registrations, right? We need to streamline the process and think about personal care and ag, right? There's some crossover there with the different surfactants and whatnot. I think regulators need to make it easier because you can actually apply it on your person, right, your skin. But when it comes to ag, they want all this data where some of the data was already there. We really just need to see if we can't get the regulators to understand that and allow that. So non-use is a big one. The untreated acre, right? I talk about that. Farmers don't fully use the adjuvants with all pesticide applications, which is creating issues. Talking about resistance, what I said earlier in the conversation here. How do we address that? And going back to my market research that I've done over my career is growers, that's the last thing they're thinking about is in what they're going to add to their tank as far as an adjuvant goes. They're thinking about the rent, their fertilizers, their labor, go down the list, all the different inputs that goes into farming. That's the last one. But we need to educate the retailers and their sales agronomists, the ones that are actually out there going making the recommendations. So I see that's where we could create a solution to the problem here. I don't know if we'll fully ever alleviate it, but we can gain on it. And ESA is going to bring some light to it too, right? The problem is if you ask a grower, and I have some farmers in my family, I asked them, have you heard of ESA? And they have not. So there's some education that's going to be necessary for everybody to understand and get on board. The last one I'll say is the innovation. And it's back to what hasn't been made since the inception of adjuvant markets. Not saying we can't do that, but it's going to be a challenge, right? You're asking for challenges, and how do we address it? We need companies to step up and really look at different molecules. How does this one interact with this one? Is there synergism? Because we could use some new tools in the toolbox.
Yeah, definitely. I know I hear that the new tools in the toolbox because of all the banning that's happening. So, Andrea, did you want to add anything?
I mean, I couldn't agree more with regulatory pressure, educational side. The majority of the countries in the world, we still need to do a lot of efforts for growers to understand what's the value of adjuvants and how can that benefit them. And tied to the R&D part is also price pressure, right? So when you have costs rising on, how expensive it is and complex to register products, R&D of new molecules, new things, the educational aspect. And then we've seen in a lot of markets that there's a lot of price pressure. And as mentioned, adjuvants usually are not on that top priority list for the growers. So those are the challenges that I think we'll continue to face.